Hello, folks. Our Wimbledon coverage this year is sponsored by Local Tennis Leagues, the home of friendly, competitive tennis in the UK.
With over 10,000 players in local tennis leagues up and down the country, it's never been easier to find someone locally with a similar ability to have a hit with.
It really is tennis on your terms, competitive and with total control of when and where you play over 8-week rounds.
It's also a fun way to get fit, meet new people, make the most of your local park or tennis venue, and get those competitive juices flowing.
And it's absolutely open to all standards. You just need to be 18 or over to play.
So whether you're at the beginning of your tennis journey like me,
or a master on the court like me, there's something for everyone.
Once you're signed up, there's also the chance to win prizes, play for points, and receive a free tube of tennis balls just for playing your matches. You also get a host of other great benefits, including access to the Wimbledon ballot.
So what are you waiting for? Join Local Tennis Leagues today at www.localtennisleagues.com and use our exclusive checkout code weekly50 in capitals for 50% off your £18 entry fee.
That's www.localtennisleagues.com, weekly50 at the checkout. The link is in the description. So get ready to play some friendly,
competitive tennis
on a court near you.
Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel and Kim. On today's Wimbledon Quarter-Finals catch-up, sponsored by Local Tennis Leagues.
Rafael Nadal battles past Taylor Fritz and injury.
Novak Djokovic fights back from the brink.
And Simona Halep eases through Amanda Anisimova.
Kim, today is the 6th of July and we are here to catch up on the quarterfinal action at Wimbledon at Tennis Weekly HQ. We are coming off the back of Rafael Nadal battling through Taylor Fritz and his abdominal injury. And we've also, of course, had on the men's side Nick Kyrgios with a more straightforward encounter against Christian Garin. And we're going to be talking about all the quarterfinals action from today on the men's side as well as the women's side. And I feel like there's only one place to start, Kim. We've had 5 sets galore, I feel, in the men's quarterfinals, with 3 of the 4 matches going the distance. Rafael Nadal today against Taylor Fritz. I mean, this was probably even more dramatic than Novak Djokovic is coming back from 2 sets down yesterday against Jannik Sinner, given Taylor Fritz was playing well. And Rafael Nadal, we saw some tape on his abdomen during the week. And unfortunately, it reared itself, through the match.
It did. It did not look good at one point for Rafa. You know, he was clearly having issues on serve and then clutching his abdomen sort of after serving. We thought that he might potentially retire from the match. And, you know, he's come out afterwards to say that he was considering that, but the fact that he was on centre court in front of all those people with the crowd, you know, that sort of enabled him to just keep fighting and carry on, as we often see him do. And, you know, he is the last person to want to retire unless it's sort of absolutely critical. So he managed to hang in there and somehow win on a last set tiebreak, which at certain points of the match just looked unlikely, you know, thinking, how is he going to get through with this injury? But it's not the first time we've seen it, and I mean it's just incredible. I mean, if anyone can do that, it is Rafa. But I
mean, it was crazy. His box were literally telling him to retire. There were all sorts of flailing arms and hand signals going about, and they felt like, you know, it was, you know, time up on Nadal's adventure at Wimbledon, his adventure towards, who knows, a calendar Grand Slam. But he obviously had other ideas, which was, quite interesting. You know, quite interesting to see. We don't normally see, I feel like, so overtly the box saying something and then the opponent or the player just saying, you know, no, I see what you're saying, but I don't agree with you. But if there was one player you feel like he's gonna just sort of battle through the pain, that is Rafael Nadal. And, you know, as this match went on, I think, you know, we realized just how much, you know, he wants it. You know, he's not been in this position for, you know, a long, long time. You know, first 2 Grand Slams of the year, unbeaten in Grand Slam matches. He wasn't going to let that go due to injury. And, you know, oddly against Taylor Fritz as well, Kim, because the last time they played in a final, he had a broken rib. So it was just amazing to see. And for me, this was a match that reminds me that not necessarily Rafael Nadal is one of the greatest players of all time, but is actually one of the greatest competitors of all time. And that sort of innate desire within him to compete on a tennis court, I feel like that really, really shone through today as the match went on against Taylor Fritz.
Yeah, I think his competitiveness is second to none, to be honest. And
in sport.
Yeah, absolutely, across all sport. And everyone looks up to him for that as a result. And I mean, Taylor Fritz, yeah, bit of a curse maybe playing Taylor Fritz with those injuries. It also
what is that about?
Well, it reminded me as well when Fritz was in that 5-setter with Djokovic at the 2021 AO. I think Fritz might have been 2 sets up, and Novak was clutching his abdomen. I think it was his abdomen or his groin. I think it was his stomach. And everyone thought Novak was going to retire, and he didn't. He carried on. He managed to win that match. A lot of people were then afterwards saying that, oh, he wasn't really injured or all this sort of stuff. But it reminded me a lot of that match. And it is, for Fritz, it's quite difficult to like play against someone who is like overtly injured. You think, should I change my strategy? Should I play differently? It's going to get into your head, especially as the match went on and he was 2-1 up, thinking, oh, am I going to do this? Am I going to get, the biggest win of my career on this court? And it starts to probably play on your mind a bit more, and you've got more to lose as the match goes on, haven't you? So that probably played a factor right at the very end. And Rafa was just such a stalwart competitor and so like clever and able to play around the problem that he was having.
Yeah, definitely. I think, with Taylor Fritz, you talk about that Novak Djokovic match, and when it becomes a reality that he maybe could win against a big three opponent on, in the best of 5 stage, again, it felt like he got stage fright. And I really do think that injury, sort of changed the complexion of the match, because he was playing, great tennis. He was living with Rafa. His double-handed backhand, particularly across court, was, I thought, fantastic. And he didn't really let the occasion get to him. But as soon as that injury happened, it just felt like to him, either I'm gonna win and people are gonna say, yeah, but it's like we beat him earlier in the season and he's injured, so it doesn't really count. Or if he was going to end up losing, it was going to be a big disappointment. And for him, unfortunately, that's what happened. But I think just shows that, for a player in this sort of best of 5 set format, regardless, of what the scoreline is, things can change. And I think Fritz, he needed to be able to ultimately handle that injury better and maybe show a bit more ruthlessness, because he didn't show that ruthlessness against Novak Djokovic at the Australian Open when he was, as you said, 2 sets up and he should have been going for the jugular. And you felt in this match when he was 2-1 up, he should have again showed that more ruthlessness. And I thought he would have learnt from those previous experiences. But for him, it's still very much a learning curve.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the stats, though, they're very much on a par. I mean, exactly the same total number of points won, same amount of winners, same amount of break points they had. I mean, similar serving stats, to be honest, apart from obviously Taylor Fritz banging down quite a few more aces. But, they're very, very close. But this is another argument, surrounding, do you play best of 5 at Slam still? Do you reduce it to best of 3? Because we would have had very different semi-finalists if we were only playing best of 3 at a Grand Slam. Taylor Fritz, Jannik said, they would have gone through. I mean, obviously the dynamic, I guess, would change, and Rafa and Novak may have played differently from the word go. But it does show that this best of 5 set format is just so unique, and we do get these sort of epics happening with somewhat different results, perhaps. And I think Fritz will be, disappointed, of course. He's come close, and I think he would have had a real good shot as well against Nick Kyrgios. I think that could have been a really interesting matchup in the semi-final if he'd come through today. But I think he's had a really fantastic tournament. He also won Eastbourne, so him on the grass, he's had a really, really good run and getting to this stage of a Slam for the first time. So he should certainly be very proud of his tournament.
I think although, in the kind of immediacy of defeat, I think he's already admitted that this is probably the biggest, most disappointing loss, of his career, because, of his opponent, and the fact that they were, not at 100%. I mean, I think what what was funny about this match, in my view, was just the number of breaks that was going on throughout the match, because Rafa, obviously, certainly in sets 4 and sets 5, his serve was way down. His first serve was way down in the third set as well, actually, and was really there for the taking for Fritz. But even when there were kind of breaks occurring, the opponent was able to just break straight back. So it really, I felt, kept the fans and the crowd on their kind of toes in terms of what was going to happen next. But ultimately, when it did get to that championship tiebreak, Nadal's, I think, that competitive edge really kind of came to the fore, and there really was only going to be one winner. And it again just shows that with this best of 5 set format, yes, Taylor Fritz very competitive against big 3 players like Rafael Nadal, like he's shown earlier on in the season in in the United States. But when it comes to best of 5, the longer and longer it goes, that's where kind of true champions, I think, elevate themselves. And certainly we saw that today. And Rafa is now 19-0 at Grand Slams this year, still undefeated, has Nick Kyrgios-Kim on Friday. What are your initial thoughts about that? Because I don't even know if Rafa, I mean, I think Rafa will turn up for it. I don't think the injury is that bad, and we know that he likes, or he knows how to deal with playing through the pain barrier, probably more so than any other opponent on the tour at the moment. So what are your thoughts going into that match?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was considering after he won today, I was thinking, would he withdraw in front, in advance of the semis if it was that bad, rather than like potentially disappointing the crowd like during the match. I mean, you just don't know. Every day is different, and like you said, he has this chronic foot injury anyway, where he said that some days are just the pain's terrible, some days it's not so bad. So I guess he needs to seek the advice of his doctor and his physio, maybe see if there's any treatment they can do on this abdomen, and see what the situation is on the Friday. We hope we get a semi-final, and we hope that will be a good semi-final, and that it's not going to hinder the match, because obviously no one wants to see that. On paper, this is a semi-final for the ages. Perhaps they've played twice at Wimbledon before. They've got one win each on centre court between the two of them. It's definitely popcorn match, popcorn tennis kind of got written all over it. So we all hope that Rafa will be fit and able to compete well. And yeah, like you said, if anyone's going to do their best to be there, it is Rafa. So fingers crossed for that one. I mean, Kyrgios will be a lot fresher. He only had a 3-setter today against Christian Garin to reach his first semi-final of a Grand Slam. And it was very straightforward. It was kind of as we expected. He was playing well, pretty calm, especially just...
He had a bit of a slow start, though. I felt.
He did, which was a bit surprising when I was like looking at the scores. But he recovered quickly, and then from then on, it was kind of part of the course. I mean, Garin did well to stick with him more in that third set. But I mean, with Kyrgios, he's been saying that when he had previously, got to like the quarterfinal here before, or just had won a few matches perhaps at Slam, like his attitude off the court wasn't particularly the most professional. Like he wasn't really focused. He wasn't in a good place. He's been saying that mentally he feels pretty good right now. He's being a lot more professional, which is kind of what we've always said he needed to do and to be. So it seems like obvious changes to make, but it obviously is clearly, he's reaping the benefits of that. And it's showing in his performances. He's doing really, really well. He's got an excellent shot to get into his first Slam final.
Yeah, definitely. I think the only concern or worry was not necessarily, the match he played against Christian Garin, but certainly the news that was breaking out around the match, because he did get charged back in his hometown, back in Australia, in Canberra, charged with common assault. and he's going to be charged next month, and they relate to allegations of Kyrgios grabbing his former partner back in December 2021. I mean, this is obviously not great news. I don't know where it's going to lead to. I was a bit surprised it came out during Wimbledon whilst Nick Kyrgios is in the tournament. That felt like it was deliberately timed for this moment, for sort of mass nuisance or mass sort of bringing the wheels off the Nick Kyrgios story at Wimbledon. But what do you make of this? Because obviously we've had previous situations still unresolved in relation to kind of this sort of topic on the ATP tour. We're talking about Sasha Zverev, Basilashvili, and who knows, maybe Nick Kyrgios unfortunately might be part of this conversation, but we've still not really seen anything from the the ATP to show that they're sort of doing something about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was skeptical about the allegations coming out like overnight before this match. And I mean, we know the media choose their timings very very maybe I'm being cynical, but I feel like this was already news maybe, and it's only just been released. I don't know. I'm kind of skeptical about the timing. However, if this is up for the court to decide, I'm not privy to the evidence. This is an allegation at this time, so we don't know what the evidence is. So we'll have to see what happens in the hearing next month in Canberra. It doesn't sound good, and yes, it is part of this kind of, like, we've had a few cases, what with Zverev, Basilashvili. So I don't like to comment because it's we don't know the ins and outs of the allegations and what's supposed to have happened. But I mean, one thing that Kyrgios didn't seem to let it do was to get into his head today. He just said he kind of was able to focus on his tennis, and that was one thing, I guess, that you thought, oh, having all this all over the media might influence his performance on court. I mean, it still might, if there's more kind of stuff in the media kind of in the next few days about this, if it really blows up as a story. It's not doesn't sound good, does it? It doesn't sound good. But I don't want to judge someone when it may just not be. I don't want to comment when it's down to the law courts to decide, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like Wimbledon will be hearing this story and hoping and thinking, oh, not another thing to deal with regards to Nick Kyrgios and his his time at Wimbledon in 2022. But yeah, certainly for me, regardless of the outcome of this or where this goes, again, for me it's still sort of this sort of issue. It's a real topic, it's a real problem, it feels like, for the ATP. And who knows, maybe they need to do a lot more about it, because it doesn't feel like they've got infrastructure in place to kind of to handle these situations if they come to fruition. So as you said, it'll be interesting to see how that develops. It's still, as you said, just an allegation at the moment, but certainly something serious that, based on the statements that have been coming out, Nick Kyrgios and his team are handling very, very seriously.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't know what the ATP will do. I mean, I think it depends on what happens in the hearing as to whether they would do anything. But they haven't, obviously.
Well, I still feel like they need to.
They haven't done anything about.
They need to sort Sasha's Zverev,
exactly,
or do nothing.
So I wouldn't expect them to do anything because they haven't done anything about the other cases. Although that hasn't gone to a court of law, has it? This is actually going to a law court where the Zverev thing has not made it to that particular location. So we'll see how that develops over the coming days, weeks. I mean, just looking ahead to the semi-final between Rafa and Kyrgios, Rafa leads the head-to-head 6-3. He's won their last 3 meetings, including the 2 that they've the one they had at Indian Wells this year. I remember watching that. Obviously that was on hard court. They haven't played on grass since here 3 years ago.
I remember that tiebreak in the first set when Kyrgios just went AWOL and it was a bagel tiebreak to Nadal.
Doesn't happen very often, is it? Bagel tiebreaks. They're quite rare, actually. So Kyrgios' last win over Rafa was at Acapulco in 2019. That was that last set tiebreak.
Yeah.
I think he saved a match point, didn't he?
Well.
Yeah, I remember that one. So I think it's obviously got potential epic written all over it.
I think it's got lots of tie breaks written all over it. Looking at their last Last 4 matches in particular, lots of tie breaks there. I mean, they played at the Australian Open in 2020, and as you said, Wimbledon 2019. Both of those best of 5 set matches had 2 tie breaks in them each. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again. I'll be interested to see how the crowd acts during that match, because I think it's going to be a bit more like Nick Kyrgios versus Paul Jubb first round, when Nick Kyrgios will be the pantomime villain in that match. I feel like everyone is going to be supporting Nadal, and they're going to be playfully supporting Nick Kyrgios, and sparks could fly him, because I still remember that match they had at Wimbledon all those years ago. I think back in 2014, when there was certainly some afters between the two. Nick Kyrgios, I remember just hitting a massive body shot at Nadal at the net. I wonder if Nadal will remember that stepping out on court. It'll be. I just hope that they are both 100% and can play out a match, because they are both very much in form, and it'll be another, I no doubt, thrilling encounter.
Yeah, because I don't know if Nick has any sort of shoulder niggle going on still. Like I'm not sure today. I wasn't watching that match. I was obviously watching the other ones. So.
I saw that scoreline to begin with,
Mm.
when he lost the first 9 points and was, down 3-1, and I thought, oh, has the shoulder happened? Is Nick Kyrgios getting his excuse in early during the match? But he was able to obviously kind of correct that, but it still might be a niggling doubt. It's just fascinating how they go about, each player goes about kind of these injuries, because Rafa, with this abdomen problem sounds like a surgeon. Abdominal problem. He's been very quiet about it, hasn't he? Yes, there's been tape there, but he's really kind of made no fuss in the build up to each match about it. In an interview I saw a few days ago, he just politely said, "I don't want to talk about it." Whereas someone like Nick Kyrgios with his shoulder, during his match before Christian Garin, it was very kind of obvious that his shoulder was hurting. He was showing it to the crowd. He was touching his shoulder, all this sort of thing. And it's fascinating to me how he was so overt about it, whereas Nadal, it was like poker face, nothing's wrong with me.
Yeah, exactly. It's different ways of dealing with it, and I guess Rafa was always very careful to hide what's going on, which is why today, when he was grimacing, and it sort of made you think, oh, there is definitely something potentially quite serious. So we'll have to see. Hopefully, they'll both be fit enough to give us a great match. I mean, on the other side of the draw, we've got Novak Djokovic, defending champion. As we alluded to earlier, he also had a 5-set match, but quite different, I think, in the sense of the lack of drama in the last 3 sets.
It was like a tale of two halves, wasn't it?
Yeah, he went 2 sets down, 7-5, 6-2, which, I mean, I was quite surprised by. But then we've seen Djokovic in this situation, I think pretty much, actually, I would say the last couple of slams he's won, there has been a match where he's gone 2 sets down and he's very calmly come back against, young players like, I remember Lorenzo Musetti, now Jannik. And I think Taylor Fritz at the AO was 2 sets up. And he just sort of doesn't panic. And, he did that in this match. He said he went off to the toilet, had a pep talk in the mirror when he was 2 sets down, and that seemed to work wonders, because it was very different when he came back onto the court after that. And
what do you think he told himself in this magical toilet break, when he went off the court at 2 sets down? Because he was not playing. Jannik Sinner, I think, to give him credit, was playing particularly well. But if you're Djokovic in that situation, walking off the court 2 sets down in a match, you're kind of like, and a tournament you're probably expected to win on centre court, what do you think he was kind of saying to himself, in that mirror, in that changeover?
I mean, probably some positive visualizations and, meditative speech or something. I mean, I think just, like, obviously positive, proactive, motivational language, I guess. He knows he can do it. He's been here before. He's a great champion. It's that mentality that's got him through before, and got him through this time. And as it went on, Sinner's thinking, oh, I'm 2 sets up. I could win this. I'm in this position. I've got stuff to suddenly lose. Whereas, the start of the match, he was just going for it. As it goes on, he's in the winning position, and that's when, you might start to get tight, and not play as freely as you do at the beginning of the match. So I think we've seen this many times before.
Yeah, it was his first quarterfinal at Wimbledon, so there was definitely, I think, pressure going into him. Yes, he's had big matches before on the tour, but I think this was a little bit of a different kettle of fish. And it was interesting to me as the match went on. Sinner, he didn't really get frustrated. He's a very kind of emotionless player, I feel, on the tennis court. Doesn't really give much away, but at the same time, he can just play some fantastic tennis. I feel like the power he is able to generate. I look at him and I look at his frame, and it sometimes surprises me how well he can hit the ball and how quick it kind of moves through the court. And I think we saw that certainly on show in the first two sets, and we saw that in the match before in the fourth round against Carlos Alcaraz. But again, similar to kind of the Nadal Fritz story, it just felt like for Sinner, when it got real and there was a prospect of him dumping out one of the big three, arguably the favorite for the tournament, the expectation, the pressure, it just got too much for him.
Yeah, and I think it's really difficult, isn't it, for the younger players to get past that, because they
need these experiences, don't they?
They need them, yeah, and they should learn from them with each sort of match that they have. But it's almost, Novak, and with all these players, like, the reputation helps them half the time, doesn't it? It's, you think, oh, I'm up against this absolutely amazing, like, god of tennis, and what am I doing? I'm 2 sets up. Can I actually do this? Start to question yourself. I mean, I know I would be that. I'd have massive imposter syndrome. But you almost got to think in your head, right, I'm just actually at the start of the match. This is the first set. Like, forget that you're 2 sets up and just literally try and reset back to the start of the match again, perhaps. I mean, it's difficult when obviously Novak, ups his level, and he's suddenly getting a lot more intensity coming from the other end.
And especially when he's hitting shots like that double-handed backhand, cross-court passing shot, doing the splits, ending up on the ground, doing like an
airplane.
I don't know what that was
great
about.
Image, yeah.
I know. I did see some wisecracks on social media talk about he's pretending to be a plane to get into the United States later in the year. But
oh dear.
But yeah, for me that was actually shot of the tournament actually so far. It just sort of typified, I think, Djokovic for me in terms of his shot making, the ability for him to play under pressure, and also his flexibility. I feel like as an athlete, there's not many people who are as flexible as him in terms of what he's able to do from the back of the court. So it was that was just kind of one of many kind of shots he was able to bring, certainly into the the second half of the match. And he just sort of ran away with it. And Jannik Sinner, I think, was a little bit powerless. I don't think his level particularly dropped. I just think that Djokovic was just able to elevate it at the time he needed it most. And he's had to draw on that a fair few times in Grand Slams over the last few years. And he's now gone and lost the first set 20 times at a Grand Slam, in a Grand Slam setting, and won only 11 of those matches. And so Jannik Sinner might have been thinking, is this my time? But I just think with Djokovic, he's probably the most dangerous player, I think, in a 2 sets to love down situation.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's if he was going into to play for your life or something, you'd want, well, him and Rafa, wouldn't you? But sort of slightly different styles in a way. I think, like what we saw with the Novak Sinner match, it was just a lot more calm and composed. Different dynamics, isn't it? We didn't have any injury worries going on. We didn't have any, is this match going to suddenly end now? And yeah, it was just sort of like very I mean, I was expecting with the Fritz Rafa match for it to be much tighter anyway, was I thought Novak would kind of
I was expecting a handshake.
Comfortably.
I was expecting a handshake, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, the other match we had in the semis, Cam Norrie. Let's move on to that because we could probably talk about Novak all day and Rafa. Cam Norrie against David Goffin. I mean, did you predict this one to be 5 sets? I think I said 4. I think we both said 4 sets to Norrie. So I think we knew Goffin would make it difficult. Perhaps not as difficult as we actually thought it it would be. But Cam got off to a bit of a tight, slow start, a lot of errors in the first few sets, and was struggling a bit. But I think the way he was able to hone in his game and come through in 5. I mean, 7-5 in the 5th set. You're on your first Grand Slam quarter-final in front of a home crowd, with nerves.
Duke of Duchess and Cambridge are there, Kim.
Exactly. Royalty watching.
Not in the royal box. You don't normally see royalty, I feel like, schlep it out to number 1 court.
Well, I'm glad they did. Like, they obviously want to see their man.
Definitely.
So good on them. And he was I was very impressed that he was able to stay patient, like he said, and like clean up those errors and let his tennis do the talking towards the end. And I mean, coming back from 2 sets to 1 down, really impressive. I mean, I'm sure Goffin was probably tiring slightly because he'd had that very long match the round prior. But I mean, he should be proud of his performance as well, because he did very well, was making life difficult for Cam.
Yeah, you felt the longer the match went on, or the longer Cam Norrie could keep David Goffin out on court, it was going to favour him, given Goffin's epic against Tiafoe in the round before. But he did make it difficult for Norrie. He's a great for me, Goffin, he's like a great point constructor. You can see he's got quite a slight frame. He's not the biggest person on a tennis court. He actually looks, I think, quite lightweight, but his positional play is fantastic. And he was moving Norrie all around the court, I feel, particularly in that first set. And it was really, I think, disruptive to Norrie. He really had to, I think, recalibrate, how he was hitting from the baseline, given Goffin's timing, taking the ball early. It just was not affording Norrie a lot of time. And that's why I think it led to kind of so many unforced errors. I mean, 33 in the first 3 sets, that is not very much like Cam Norrie. We think of him as a player who gives very, very little away in terms of errors from the back of the court. And I think it was obviously quite tight at times, but when he went kind of 2 sets to 1 down, I think he helped. He really drew, I think, inspiration from the crowd, and that combined with kind of tinkering his strategy and his game plan, really kind of, I think, brought him home, particularly in that 5th set when he was able to break and win 7-5.
Exactly. And I mean, Norrie's through to his first semi-final. It's been since 2016 that we've had a British person in the semis, since Andy Murray. So I know we had Kyle Edmund at the AO, but it's just, I think, very deserved that Norrie's got to this stage after all the gains in his career over the last year and a bit. He, like, his first titles, breaking the top 10. So to finally do well at a slam and go deep, and to do it at his home tournament in Wimbledon, obviously over the moon for him. And I feel like he's also got a bit under the radar this fortnight. I feel like he's been on court 1 more often than centre. And, if we know if that had been Andy Murray, that wouldn't have been the case. So,
no.
But yeah, he'll be on centre, obviously, on Friday against Novak. No one's expecting Norrie to win that. Like, he has absolutely nothing to lose, which I think is quite a good position to be in. We saw how he was quite tight yesterday at the start of the match, a lot more errors. So hopefully against Novak, I'm sure he'll be nervous, but it's almost like, literally just give it all you've got, because we're not expecting you to win.
I am with you, Kim. I mean, Djokovic leads the head-to-head 1-0. He defeated Norrie in straight sets at the ATP finals last year. But I think it's a match where, if Djokovic turns up, plays his game, which you would obviously expect him to do in a semi-final on centre court, it should be, in my view, a straight sets job for Novak Djokovic. But we all know Cam Norrie's going to have the crowd behind him. I think that's going to kind of motivate him. I think it's probably also going to motivate Novak Djokovic. We've seen him in situations in the past where, he hasn't had the crowd, and it's riled him up, and he's just sort of like been like, fine, if you're going to cheer my opponent, then I'm going to produce some amazing tennis and send you home with sad faces. But I certainly think that the crowd will help maybe both of them in that sort of respect. But you feel like if both players played their best, Novak Djokovic is coming through probably, I'd say in like a tight 3-set match.
Tight, okay. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure how tight it's going to be.
Do you think it's going to be like do you think Djokovic needs to even play his best? I mean, he's given people chances. This has not just been like the most. It's not been the easiest journey, I feel, for Djokovic through to the semi-finals. I mean, Norrie will, I think, look back on how some of his opponents have played so far and have taken a set or two off him so far, and he'll take, I think, great sort of courage and inspiration from that.
Yeah, maybe I'm being harsh on Norrie. I just he doesn't have like a big weapon, does he? Like a big serve. So I just feel like Novak's so good at returning. Norrie's going to be under pressure constantly on his serve, and I feel like as the match wears on, he might just get a bit frustrated. But I think straight sets. I hope that Norrie can at least make those sets competitive. And like you said, yeah, to be fair, Novak hasn't sailed through as comfortably as perhaps in other renditions of the championship. So it might be there might be some hope.
It does feel like it has got now real for Cam, in terms of, I think, even the most diehard British fans wouldn't have expected Cam Norrie to reach the semi-finals. And for me, this is really the moment it's got real, because he's up against Novak Djokovic. What feels like everything is going for him, but he'll have great momentum, and yeah, we'll have to see how he gets on, and hopefully more people will know who he is, Kim, after the tournament, because I think he had a chat with his taxi driver or someone in a bar, and the person said to him, "Do you look exactly like that guy, Cam Norrie, on the television?" So I just hope that more people will recognise him after this tournament, because this has been the moment he has gone the furthest. And I hope he gets the plaudits and the recognition from the British fans from that, because I do think, as you said, I don't think it's gone under the radar so far. And it feels weird to say that, because he's in a semi-final. He is one of the last four standing, and the three others are Djokovic, Nadal, and Nick Kyrgios. I mean, to get there, that's a pretty incredible achievement.
Yeah, exactly. So he's in good company. He should be proud. Let's take a quick break now, Joel. We'll be back in the second half, and we'll be looking back at all of the women's quarterfinal action at the championships. And now that we've got our semi-final lineup, so do not go anywhere. Welcome back to our Wimbledon Quarter-Finals catch-up, sponsored by local tennis leagues. And now we're going to move on to looking at the ladies' quarter-finals. So today we had, a very comfortable win for Simona Halep out on centre court against Amanda Anisimova. Thought this one might be a bit closer, actually.
I mean, it was closer than that match last week 2 weeks ago in Germany, wasn't it?
Yes, but we know that Anisimova has beaten Halep at a slam before, and she's been playing decent tennis this week, and with Darren Cahill working with her, I think, as well a little bit this week, who obviously used to coach Simona Halep, so that added dynamic to it. But yeah, 6-2, 6-4 to Halep. She hasn't lost a set still this tournament. She's been playing really, really decent tennis, and was able to just to get on top of the match kind of from the word go. And I feel like with Halep, I didn't realise this, but yes, she didn't play last year, and obviously there wasn't a tournament in 2020. So this is her title defence year, and she's unbeaten really since 2018 Wimbledon still.
Yeah.
So she really is the one to beat, I guess, perhaps, given that and her form here last time she played.
Based on her pedigree, I think the other three are first time Grand Slam semi-finalists. So from that perspective, you certainly put Simona Halep as a favourite, and the way she played against Anisimova, it was very impressive with how she dealt with her. We all know Halep as this counterpuncher, and I think from the the baseline, Anisimova, it just got to a point where I just felt either Anisimova has to hit a winner here, or she's going to end up losing the point. And that's exactly how it played out, I feel, for the majority of it. Halep went 6-2, 5-1 up. It looked very, very easy. It was only then when Anisimova actually made a match of it, and you were sort of wondering, well, why didn't Anisimova start like this? But it was only really when she was sort of swinging freely that it became a little bit more difficult for Halep. I mean, Anisimova had points, I think, to bring it back to 5-all, but Halep was able to kind of stop the momentum in its tracks and come through in the end. But I just think that the Anisimova, she didn't really have a plan B. She was just sort of hoping, I think, that her game was gonna get better as the match went on. She wasn't trying anything different. She was just trying to, I feel, just like get into a position to hit some big shots. But given Simona Halep's defense and her movement around the court, it was just a bit too much and a bit overwhelming, to be honest, I think, for Anisimova.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, what can you do when you're up against someone in Halep's form? And I was a bit, maybe disappointed that Anisimova wasn't able to make as many inroads. But I mean, yeah.
Especially with working with Darren Cahill. I
Well, insider knowledge.
I would have been all over Darren Cahill,
Yeah.
being like, tell me everything you told Simona Halep.
Yeah, and she came back, she was 5-1 down in that second set, and she did win like 3 games to try and to fight back. And maybe that's where she feels a bit more comfortable, and she's sort of just playing as freely and aggressive as she can, as the sort of like last chance saloon almost. But yeah, I think it's it could have been I was maybe a bit disappointed by the sort of I guess I was expecting maybe a 3-setter, but I was expecting that from Halep Badosa as well, and obviously that didn't. And so Halep's I think had the most difficult draw out of all the players left in it, I think, from the word go, and she's come through very, very nicely. So that's why I'm thinking she is the one to beat. But she won't have it all her own way, because she does have Elena Rybakina in the semi-final, who is there at the stage of a Grand Slam for the first time. And she came through in 3 sets against Ajla Tomljanović, 4-6, 6-2, 6-3. I mean, I did think Rybakina would win this one. So Tomljanović played a really, really strong first set, like really got off to a flying start, and was very, very tidy in that first set. But once she went into the second, Rybakina stepped it up a lot, and I think Tomljanović was really struggling to kind of keep up, which obviously was reflected in the scoreline. It was able to serve it out. Very, very impressive on serving those last 2 sets. And I think, we know that she's one of those players that on her day is, right up there. And it's nice that she's getting form back after a difficult season as well.
Yeah, because she started 2022 really, really well. She got to the final in Adelaide, and then lost to Ash Barty. But yeah, she had some real difficulties. I think she got COVID in February, and it's taken a time, I think, to get back. But she's certainly been a player we've had our eye on at Grand Slams. Given her quality. I mean, for me, Kim, the interesting thing about Rybakina is not the performance she gave. I was sort of expecting her to turn up, and yes, Tomljanović put up a really good fight, played really, really flawless tennis actually in that first set, but just a bit too much from Rybakina. But Kim, she is a player that, yes, she does represent Kazakhstan, but she actually has a lot of Russian heritage. She was born in Russia, she was raised in Russia, and I believe she still resides in Russia. And a lot of people are talking about, we're coming to a very real prospect potentially of Rybakina being in a Wimbledon final, potentially, who knows, Wimbledon ladies champion. And we could end up with a situation that maybe Wimbledon didn't want, given, they've obviously banned Russians and Belarusians from attending. You could easily just see the news headlines in terms of Russian-born Rybakina wins the ladies title. And it feels like a situation that the Wimbledon, given what they've done, it's probably not what they would have wanted.
I think it would be, I mean, I want Halep to win the tournament, I think.
Yeah.
I'd love her to defend her title.
Long way to go.
But if
that.
Rybakina did win, it would be a bit of a up yours to Wimbledon, because in a way, like, she has obviously big Russian links, so I obviously she's not representing Russia, but it's kind of, there will be a lot of criticism and sort of irony there. So it would be quite interesting.
Do you think they could have done anything about it? Like, do you think, like in hindsight, it could have been extended to players like Rybakina who were, I don't know, born in Russia as well? Or do you think Wimbledon even, well, if she got to the final, do you think they will have a word with her, about what she can and can't say, in the player ceremony? Because, that's what they're, I feel like that's maybe something they'll be nervous about.
I think that
I don't feel like they have grounds to be nervous, but you just know that they won't want to leave anything to chance.
I don't think she would be stupid enough to mention Russia in any sort of on-court interviews. I mean, and I guess they're not going to have had rules that said, oh, if you were born in Russia or if you've got like a Russian parent, because that's like, I mean, Anisimova wouldn't be able to play because her parents are Russian. So, I mean, there's lots of players that are from Russia that represent other countries and whatnot. So they can't have made those rules that extensive. But yeah, I just think it's kind of like it would be an interesting turn of affairs if she was to win. It's kind of like,
I wonder what Daniil Medvedev would have to say about it.
Well, they'll all be just defecting to Kazakhstan. We've already had one player, I think, defect to Kazakhstan, and I think was it a doubles player. But a lot of the Russians have already defected, not since the war, but to Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, because I guess they can get funding. The governing bodies there, the sporting bodies, they sort of make themselves very attractive for these players to go off there and get the support. So you can understand why they would do that. But yeah, so she's not the only one, but she's obviously just had a very good tournament and got to this stage. So it's drawn a bit of light onto the situation. But yeah, she was much more convincing as the match went on, and almost watertight on serve, especially in that second set. It was very difficult for Tomljanović.
Kim, what I also enjoy is I read this fantastic fact on social media. Elena Lekostova remains the only player who's actually born in Kazakhstan to reach a Grand Slam singles semi-final, but she did it representing Russia, so it goes the other way as well.
Wow, blimey! I don't know what her story is. I suppose. I mean, could that be something to do if she was born when they were all Soviet Union? I don't know, but it's when you get into all the sort of political side of things. But well, we've got Halep, Rybakina, haven't we, set up, and we've also got Tatijana Maria against Jabeur in the semi-final. You were right about this one, Joel. You predicted Maria, and I was going about Niemeyer to win the tournament. But yeah, Maria doing what she does best, winning in a tight third set, seemingly 4-6, 6-2, 7-5. She came through against her fellow German. So yeah, obviously into the first semi-final of a slam in her career. It's remarkable, really, because she hasn't ever gone even close to the semi-finals of a slam before. She's only reached, I think, the best she's done is the second round prior to this. So it's in the twilight of her career, such a crazily remarkable, brilliant achievement. Especially, she's ranked 103 in the world at the moment. So not many players ranked outside the top 100 have reached this stage.
And not many women's players over 34 have reached a Wimbledon semi-final. The only other players to do that, Serena Williams, Venus Williams, Martina Navratilova, Chris Evert, Billie Jean King, all legends of the game, Kim, and then Tatijana Maria. So it just shows you, I think, how incredible this is. And as you said, this is a player who, for me, her story to, her route to the semi-final, I think, has been captured by the fact that she never knows, when she is beaten. She was down against, Kostya. She was down against Ostapenko. She was down against Ostapenko multiple times, and she was down against Niemeyer, that first set, and she just able to kind of come back and keep it going and ultimately get the win. So it's been impressive how much she's kind of fought back from the brink and won these matches where we felt like maybe she's going in as the underdog. I do think with Niemeyer, I do think she is maybe like the future of German tennis. She's great. She's young. And this was it was a good performance from her, but it was an exceptional performance, I think, from Maria, given as you said, like her record in Grand Slams. Niemeyer hasn't really had that sort of, I feel like, baggage or all those disappointments, to kind of have to kind of draw upon. And I thought that maybe was going to help her, in this moment. But I think for Maria, it certainly was impressive how it's come out of nowhere in the same way, but in a different way, to kind of Emma Raducanu, or even Aslan Karatsev. I was actually, Kim, trying to think which story is it more like, or is it just a Tatijana Maria story? Because it's a story of a journeywoman, I feel, that at the end, towards the end of her career, after doing everything, battling on the tour, becoming a mother of two, it really feels like this is her crowning glory.
Yeah, and I think I'm just thinking back to the French Open a couple of years ago. We had like Nadia Podoroska get to the semi out of nowhere, and
Yes.
I mean, what happened to her? My gosh! But so we've seen this happen before. But I was wondering also. It reminded me a bit of Flavia Pennetta, winning the US Open and then like retiring immediately after. So if Maria did go on to like win Wimbledon, would she sort of think, right, there's nothing else I can kind of achieve? Almost a bit like Marion Bartley as well, like retiring quite soon after. I don't know. I mean, she hasn't obviously won it, but it's,
or even like Monica Puig at the the Olympics.
Yeah, just like a tournament that you sort of have the tournament of your life. It's kind of a one-off, and you think, well, maybe that's it. But I mean, she was very, very tidy on the court today. It's a sort of similar match in a sense against Ostapenko. Ostapenko making a lot of errors, and that's really what Niemeyer, that's what undid her as the match went on. A lot more unforced errors, and Tatijana Maria was able to just keep her game in check and convert when it mattered most. So she knows what it takes. Obviously, she's not going to have, I would say, as many unforced errors coming down the other end in the semi-final from Ons Jabeur.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I just feel like Ons Jabeur is not going to give up as many unforced errors as, say, a Jelena Ostapenko.
No, and we saw that today. Yesterday rather, against Marie Buzkova. Jabeur did drop that first set 6-3, and she wasn't playing a very clean set at that particular moment, but when she stepped it up and she sorted herself out, 6-1, 6-1 in those last two sets, it was very, very comfortable. She won, I think, 8 games on the trot at one point. And the 8 of the last 9 points to just finish it off, without any sort of nerves, and got off to that slow start, pulled it together, and off she went. So she's unbeaten on grass, this season. In fact, over the last couple of years, she's only lost 2 matches on grass. So she is a great grass court player. She's in really good form, as you can tell, and I would fully expect her to beat Maria. But I mean, it could go 3 sets. Because don't forget, Jabeur is also into the semis of a slam for the first time. So, and I think she will feel the nerves a bit as the one expected to go through. So it'll be curious.
I agree, because I think in the match against Buzkova, I do think she, again, she was going in that match as the favourite, and perhaps that affected her performance in the first set. That was one of the reasons maybe why she dropped it. But as the match wore on, she got kind of more familiar with the Buzkova game. There really was only one winner, and it'll be interesting to see, I think, with Jabeur, how she deals with Maria and kind of the unique brand of tennis she brings to the court. Very little pace, lots of slice, lots of spin. Stuff that Ons Jabeur does to her opponents. I think it'll be very much a tactical battle. I do feel like Ons Jabeur's game is more multi-dimensional. I think it's more well-rounded than Tatijana Maria's, but at the same time, Maria is going to be playing with so much confidence and belief, regardless of, I think, what position she finds herself in, because of the the scenario she has been in this tournament. So I don't feel like we're going to be able to kind of count out Maria until really the match is over. But certainly for Ons Jabeur, she will be looking at this as a big opportunity to make her first Grand Slam final.
Yeah, and what I think is nice is she's playing Maria, and they are really good friends. Apparently, they like to spend quite a bit of time off the court together. I think on Jabeur, I saw a nice video of her with one of Maria's daughters. So they're good mates. So I think it's nice that they're both at this stage of the tournament, for the first time, they're going to be playing each other. I mean,
what are they putting on that barbecue, Kim? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. But I mean, hopefully they'll be able to have a nice, evening after the match together, hanging out, maybe.
German sausage, like a bratwurst,
Bratwurst or currywurst, yeah. Very tasty.
Yes. I mean, we've got the women's semi-finals tomorrow. Ons Jabeur, Tatijana Maria is first up, then followed by Rybakina versus Simona Halep. We're going to do some predictions again, Kim. Where are you going to? What do you think is going to be the Grand Slam ladies final?
Jabeur Halep, which I think is, despite some of the shocks we've had this tournament, I think that's a credible final. Like, I wanted to say credible, but that's a predictable final that we could have predicted prior to the tournament, prior to seeds flying out early and whatnot. So I think that's the most likely final. Yeah, Jabeur Halep.
And are you going Jabeur in straights?
No, Jabeur in 3 sets, Halep in straights in the semis.
Ooh, okay.
Don't let me down, Simona.
Yeah, I just keep
now.
thinking. I just think Halep Rybakina is a little bit like pretty much the same
as the
Anisimova match. Yeah, I even if Rybakina brings an elevated game, it's a very similar sort of game, I feel, to what Anisimova brings to the court. So I think Halep will also come through that. And I think she'll come through that in straight sets. I'm going to put Ons Jabeur in straight sets as well. But I'd love to see Tatijana Maria get to the final because it's such an amazing story. But I've got to go with a Jabeur Halep final. And finally, Kim, the men's side, men's semi-finals, Novak Djokovic, Cam Norrie, Kyrgios, Nadal. What are you thinking there?
Djokovic in 3 and Kyrgios in.
We are so brutal against Cam Norrie. We should be celebrating a Brit being in the semis after all these years.
I'm not celebrating it. I'm just being a pragmatic,
being realistic.
I mean, I think with Rafa, I feel like this injury is going to get in the way. So I'm going to say Kyrgios for the win. Obviously, I would love Rafa to win. But Novak Kyrgios final. I think it could be 4 sets. Rafa might get a set. But I mean, I suppose if his abdomen's that bad, well, we'll have to see. I feel like it's going to be a Novak Nick final, which is interesting. But I don't really. It's not the final I'd be the most keen for personally. I'd love a Norrie Rafa final.
I mean, it will be interesting given all the tweets and social media Nick Kyrgios has come out right against Novak Djokovic over the last year plus. I'm going to go Djokovic in 3 as well, and I'm going to have to back Kyrgios for now. I know we've just spoken about how much of a competitor Nadal is, but I just think Kyrgios at 100%. If Rafa is not 100%, I've got to give Kyrgios the edge. I'm saying Kyrgios in 4, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see, as always, Kim. But we're going to wrap up this episode, this quarterfinals catch up with Tennis Weekly. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode. Remember to stay up to date on all the action at Wimbledon, to subscribe to us on whatever device you listen to us on. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all good podcasting platforms out there. You can also listen to us on the downloadtennis.com app. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
And you can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Tennis Weekly Pod. So do give us a like and a follow, or send us your queries, comments, feedback, and suggestions. If you prefer, you can email those to us as well, tennisweeklypod@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out our website, www.tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back on Friday at Tennis Weekly HQ to catch up on all the semi-finals action. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We will see you again soon.